네, 여러분 반갑습니다. 오늘 너무 귀한 손님들 모시고 중요한 주제 나눠보도록 하겠습니다. 지금 한국의 이 선거제도에 관해서, 그리고 두 번째로는 이 중국 공산당의 한국에 대한 영향력에 대해서, 그리고 다가오는 이 한국의 대선이 한미 동맹에 어떤 영향을 미칠지 한번 우리 몰스탄 대사님과 조한밀스 대령님, 그랜트 뉴섬 대령님 모시고 얘기 들어보도록 하겠습니다. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. It's an honor to be on your program.
It's my honor.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
So we are going to discuss several significant topics on the integrity of Korea's electoral system and CCP's influence over Korea society. And for the last subject, how the upcoming presidential election impact Korea and U.S. alliance. So before we get started, I will introduce each one of you to my YouTube channel's viewers. A gentleman sitting right next to me is Ambassador Morstan, who joined the first Trump administration, and he was appointed by President Trump to serve as the ambassador at large for the global criminal justice. He is expert on North Korea, and he is expert on international human rights law, and he is expert on international criminal justice. And next, Colonel John Mills. He has 33-year U.S. Army career, and he served as the director for cybersecurity policy and international affairs in the office of the Secretary of Defense. And his expertise areas are cybersecurity policy and international military education and training. And I got Colonel Grant Newsom. He is expert on China, and he's a senior fellow with the Center for Security Policy, and he is a retired U.S. Marine colonel and served in the Indo-Pacific for decades. And he's well known for his Amazon bestseller book, When China Attacks Are Warning to America. So I want to start with Ambassador Tan. What activities have you done so far since you arrived in Korea, and what do you plan to do for the rest of your trip?
Yeah, so we had a press conference and seminar at the National Press Club in Korea. It was packed out. It was standing room only. Many people wanted to get in who weren't able to get in. There were some media people who were there, and we were able to lay out broadly what we see and what we are thinking. Along those lines, we've done other media things, both with Korean media and with U.S. media. We were on with Steve Bannon in the War Room. I was on last night on CBS with Gordon Chang and John Batchelor.
Okay.
John is frequently on Newsmax as well. So we have we'll have an ongoing series of media things moving forward in the future. We're also trying to monitor the elections here. And so we've been hearing reports. Today is the first day of early voting. And we already have some serious concerns. There are election monitors who are there, who are counting the number of votes, and they're reporting a widespread discrepancy in terms of the number of votes that they are counting versus the number of votes that the NEC is indicating, a discrepancy of more than 10%. And that is already being reported today. Furthermore, we have reports that those who are there to monitor the election are being interfered with, and there are attempts to keep them from doing their job. This is not acceptable.
Yeah.
Finally, we also have noted that there is lawfare going on against Hwang Kyo-han, who is seeking election integrity, and this is not acceptable either.
You see that is an attack for democracy?
It is, I think, because elections are central and election integrity is central to democracy. And he has been fighting, sometimes a lonely fight along those lines. Furthermore, there's an issue of the dojang, the personal stamp. And that needs to be put on by the election monitors, the election manager for each precinct, their personal one with their own name on it, so that they can verify that ballot is valid. But if there's a pre-printed one or a generic one that doesn't have the specific name of the manager of that precinct, then how can the people trust that this is a valid ballot? Then there could just be unlimited numbers of invalid ballots that are used if there is not the personal stamp and the personal accountability that comes with that. And this is required by the Public Official Election Act, which is the national law, and it's not superseded by the regulations under that or by some contract that is illegally against the law. And that is also a very important point here, especially in early voting, which has begun today.
So you think Korean electoral system is highly centralized?
Yes.
And why does it matter?
So in the U.S., it's basically county by county.
Yeah.
You know, Colonel Mills has estimated that out of 3,000 something counties, maybe 30 something counties are problematic. And so if it's distributed out across all the counties and decentralized, then even if you have a relatively small number of counties that are problems, the issue does not affect the whole country. It can affect those limited areas, those specific counties, and then you can have more of a targeted approach to address those problem counties that are there. Whereas in Korea, it's generally the same approach applies across the whole country. And if you have a national election commission that is running the election and that in which there are a lot of concerns and a lot of questions that the citizens of Korea have about what they are doing, then the whole election system is at risk. And therefore, the whole country is at risk.
So if you find more flaws and frauds in the Korean presidential election going on, you guys are going to send some reports to Trump's administration?
Yes, we'll send it to the current administration, the Trump administration. We are open to sharing it broadly with the Korean government as well, with international organizations as appropriate, and to the general public. And so we want to be transparent in regards to what our findings are and what is the report, and to have it broadly available.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And I got a question for Colonel Mills. And what do you think major flaws are in Korea's electoral system, and how should it be fixed?
There's a number of tactical issues that are very concerning right off the bat. And we come here in the spirit of the Carter Center for Democracy, which gives the guidelines for what a free and fair election looks like. And there's already red flags in what's going on. This very disturbing report that transportation is being denied for older Koreans to travel to the polls. Very disturbing. That's taking a whole demographic and removing them from the voting pool. That's wrong. The tojong, the pre-printing of the tojong, that is just totally absurd. That means a ballot has been pre-printed with a anonymized or a generalized tojong instead of a specific individual. And that's wrong. And then the thumbprints, they're not really doing a thumbprint match, and they're purging the thumbprints immediately. So they're tricking the Korean people into thinking they're actually validating the thumbprints. The National Election Commission appears to be an unauditable body. Every other governmental organization can be investigated in Korea except for the National Election Commission. And I also have to point out, just this morning, our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, put out guidance that foreign governmental organizations that silence or censor Americans could be subject to having their visas to America canceled.
Really?
Okay. Well, we are American citizens. We are here in the spirit, which this is the Carter Center says, that election monitoring teams that are not aligned with the government are absolutely part of a free and fair election. The National Election Commission has turned down, we have asked multiple times, they have turned down because we're not part of the U.S. government. No, that's exactly right. We are not part of it, but we are here as an independent, nonpartisan group. So many red flags going on. The model for elections is Taiwan. Simple is good. The complex information technology of the National Election Commission, that's not good. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Nobody's allowed to audit. There's no transparency. We don't know what's going on with this information. And pre-printed ballots, the Carter Center right off the bat. Pre-printed ballots with the Tojong? No, absolutely wrong. So there's many red flags. If this continues like this, potentially this could lead to a situation where, like in Venezuela, where Maduro's most recent election was not recognized by many, potentially the South Korean election could be not recognized.
Are there similar abnormal ballots in U.S. too?
This has been an issue. President Trump has put out an executive order on election integrity, which will drive toward what we would call a trusted ballot that is not counterfeitable and would be forensically established as truth. Right now in America, some would argue, I've been a court-appointed election officer in America, that the machines are calibrated to catch a photocopy of a ballot. Not true.
Okay.
Not true.
So what do you think is the major difference between Korean model and Taiwan model for electoral system?
Simple, simple, simple. Simple is good. Taiwan's is simple. One day you must come in, so Taiwanese in America must return to the Republic of Taiwan and vote. No overseas ballots, no absentee ballots, no early voting. One day of, paper only, and at the end of the day, I've been there, at the end of the day, each precinct holds up a ballot. Everybody can see the ballot, how it was marked. It's marked on the wall manually. Then it goes into a computer for counting, but everybody knows the number. So simple, transparent. And Taiwan is the model for how an election should be run. This is a huge problem in America, is illegal aliens voting. I understand there are Chinese on the voting rolls here in South Korea that are allowed to vote at the local level. But how is that disaggregated from their voting at the national level? And that's a very similar problem in the U.S. We now have what's called a real ID. May 25th, that came into effect. It's much harder to counterfeit the driver's license, and it has to be established you're a U.S. citizen to receive that license. But it is still, as I've investigated, I live in Virginia, Prince William County, and we've determined, and I was part of a very important lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court in October, and Virginia challenged, said, hey, we want to take illegal votes off the rolls. Liberal activist groups fought that. The Supreme Court determined in October, before the American election, yes, an illegal voter could be taken off the rolls at any time. This was how they were stealing elections in America. For many places, definitely in Virginia.
And I got a question for Mr. Ambassador Tan. Lee Jae-myung is accused of involvement in an illegal cash transfer to North Korea, as you know. Almost $8 million to North Korea between 2019 and 2022. And the U.S. Congress CRS report detailed these corruption charges. And why does it matter? And why is it important to U.S. and Korea?
Yeah, so I've looked into this, and this flies in the face of UN sanctions against North Korea. It flies in the face of U.S. sanctions against North Korea. And I would call on the U.S. Treasury Department to look into this and to determine whether or not there should be sanctions imposed in relation to this. There seems to be a curious collusion in the South Korean judiciary to not convict Lee Jae-myung of such things, at least not until the election. Because it would be disqualifying for 5 years to be able to run as a candidate if he would be convicted in a South Korean court. And recently the Constitutional Court kicked a case back down to the lower courts, and he was found not guilty. I don't find that credible. I don't see that as the operation of the rule of law. Because no one is supposed to be above the law, no matter how powerful. And so I have a lot of concern about this situation, and I think it would be advisable for the law to not fall flat on its face, but actually be operational the way it's supposed to be. And I think there should be considerations of sanctions by the U.S., and this is a serious situation because you're not supposed to fork over around $8 million worth to the North Koreans, given the current sanctions that are there.
Okay, I got a question for Colonel Mills. A few months ago, in Stephen Banner's show, I heard that you're saying Lee Jae-myung, the leader of DPK, Democratic Party of Korea, he is a hardcore pro-China leftist. You mentioned it. What do you mean by that?
Well, some evidence of that is his behavior and the way he refers to Americans as an occupying force. I think that is insulting to many South Koreans and to Americans. My own father-in-law was wounded here twice in 1950. And to say that the Americans and the UN forces that came here were the occupying forces, and then he also says that the Soviets and the Chinese were liberating forces. It sounds like he's decided upon which side he wants to align with. And this is really, in many ways, what this election is about. Who does South Korea think is their best friend? Is it the United States or is it China? And I was just talking last night to a very significant personality in South Korea, and when we were talking, I said, if I walk down the street in Seoul and ask 100 South Koreans, which country is South Korea's best friend? Probably 70% would say America. And that's funny because that's exactly what this significant South Korean personality said. But isn't that odd? Somehow that's not in South Koreans' minds, that is not being intellectually processed. Well, if that's the case, why would somebody in South Korea vote for someone who clearly wants to align with China as South Korea's best friend? This makes no sense. I think that's a function of a highly censored legacy of South Korean media, something we had to deal with in America for 30 years until we crushed legacy media. Now podcasters like you are the dominant media in America. It took 30 years of struggle, but we've crushed them. The legacy media is, who cares what they say? Nobody's paying attention to them. Yeah, this is really important. I also wanted to clarify, here's from Secretary of State Rubio. I don't know if I should show the camera here. This is his statement that they're going to, foreign officials who silence and censor the social media. So for us to clarify, if our social media, which is we're putting out a lot of it while we're here, if that's silence, that could potentially fall into this category of a foreign government. The problem is there's friendly foreign governments that are highly targeting Americans. It's just a bizarre upside-down world. But Grant had mentioned proxies, and this is what's very concerning. China uses proxies. As we've discovered and analyzed, there is an international worldwide election fraud cartel. It's targeting South Korea. It's targeted America. Unfortunately, former U.S. government agencies like USAID helped contribute. USAID has now been crushed. USAID bumper sticker is on the AWeb website. It's U.S. aid is mentioned generously by National Election Commission, but it's a worldwide cartel. Election fraud depends on insurance policies. A good fraudster wants to make sure they have, whether it's the machines, whether it's fraudulent tojong, whether it's keeping citizens at home, whether it's early voting, they want to rack up those insurance policies to make sure one way or another they win. But they use proxies. An international nexus of election fraud is Venezuela. Isn't that interesting? Of all countries in the world, why is it that Hugo Chavez decided we're going to focus on election machine software as the future for Venezuela? Isn't that interesting? Just this morning, noticed in the hotel, somebody wearing a group of people, they had which flag on their shoulder? Venezuela. No conspiracies, no coincidences. Why in the world would there be Venezuelans in South Korea at this specific point in time?
I'll move to next question. Ambassador Tan, how do you feel since you have been watching this Korean political crisis and you are participating part of this? And what is your message to Korean people?
You know, when we landed here in the airport, we were greeted with chants like USA, USA, and cries for freedom and things along those lines. And I think all of us were touched by the passion for a free people who want to remain free. And I think we've been inspired by leaders and by the people who are willing to, sometimes at great risks to themselves and sacrificially in various ways, and sometimes for years and years and years, in certain instances, who are willing to put themselves on the line to fight for this country and for its democracy and for its freedom and for justice. And these are ideals that are worth fighting for. These are ideals that are worth sacrificing for. These are ideals that are worth putting yourself on the line for. And we have been inspired to see such people here in South Korea. And we have great admiration for that. We want to support that. And we are cheering for South Korea and its democracy in this very critical time. And we want to encourage those patriots. We want to encourage those who are standing up for these ideals to keep going. And we, from the U.S., we want to be good allies and friends, and we want to fight arm in arm together for South Korea's democracy. And so that's what we're here for, and so keep at it. Keep at it.
Thank you so much for your commitment and a visit and your deep insight. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you. You've been one of these heroes that have been out there. You have.
It's
and
my honor,
you've
yeah.
had great influence, and you've been using that influence for very good purposes. And so I have a great deal of respect for what you've been doing. So thank you for having us here, and we're glad to stand with you.
Okay, thank you. 오늘 이 시간 정말 귀한 분들 모시고 우리 대한민국 사회에 반드시 개혁해야 될 부분들 그리고 우리가 새겨드려야 될 얘기들 들어봤습니다. 먼 곳에서 와주신 우리 귀한 손님들께 여러분들 댓글로 또 응원의 메시지 많이들 보내주시고 한미동맹은 앞으로도 계속해서 굳건하게 진행될 것이며 우리는 자유를 위해서 끝까지 싸울 것입니다. 오케이, 3, 2, 1 Fight! Fight!
이호근방송 구독, 좋아요는 좋은 방송을 만드는 데 큰 힘이 됩니다. 감사합니다.